Alright, welcome back everybody to Luigi's Mansion. We've just finished up floor 4, and we're headed to floor 6. This floor 5 is where our bedrooms were, slash Egad's place was.
Oh yeah.
So, we will continue up to Castle something or other. Castle McConaughey, or whatever. I'm guessing this is a castle-themed level. Even though if I were a hotel, I would just have, I don't know, themed rooms. But I suppose since you did Luigi's Mansion 1, and I don't know what's in Luigi's Mansion 2, but let's pretend I do. You're probably all roomed out, i.e. you've done the whole let's explore a haunted mansion thing. So here we are exploring a hotel in which each level is its own unique, like, stage. I kind of like, I'm thinking like, you know, traditional Mario game. You got your plains land, you got your desert land, poison swamp land, snow land usually. You know, change it up a little bit, you know. Some of my favorite levels, though, if I can speak on Mario games and not Luigi's Mansion for a second. Some of my favorite levels were in Super Mario 3 when they did Huge Land, which I know they kind of brought back in 64, and they went with Tiny Huge Land, where sometimes you were huge and the enemies were tiny, and sometimes the enemies were giant and you were tiny. I thought that was kind of nifty. See if I can get this actual ghost and not fuck it up this time. Not doing great, am I? Alright, got him again. I just need to, like, pull him in 2 more times. Okay, I just need to pull him in 1 more time. Alright, we did it. See? Like that. Please let me get the gold bars, thank you. What else do I really like? There were a number of stages I really liked in Mario 3, and I don't know if that is the game that sort of set the standard for all Mario games after it, or if it was some combination of 1 and 2 that made 3. And hear me out. 2 in Japan was different than 2 in America, but 1 was very, like, samey. Yeah, sure, you know, you added some things here and there to try and differentiate where you were, but for the most part, you were in a near identical, like, every stage was pretty identical to, you know, every other stage. And 2, you know, you were going through different areas. Not every area was a, you know, straight up, you know, plains land. There were, you know, you were on the ocean one point, you're in the, I don't know what I'm trying to get at, but I really liked Mario 3. I liked sort of, like, even though it was still an NES game, it had such a really good way to tell a story, you know, without actually having too much physical writing story in it, you know? One of my best examples of that, aside from the fact that you go up in a you know, if you don't defeat the boss the first time, you have to run back and try and catch the airship that they're in. Aside from that, which I think is really nifty, about halfway through the game, I can't remember if it's World 4 or It's either 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there. About halfway through the stage, you have to go up a tower. And the tower is an actual stage. And then that takes you up into Cloudland. You know, where the actual castle is. It was like, you didn't have to do that, but you chose to do that. And you incorporated a level that perfectly, like, hooks the two halves of that level up. Anyways. I speak enough on Mario 3. I really liked Super Mario World as well. My only complaint, and I don't know if this is probably not a valid complaint, the game felt too short for me. Just felt a little too short. Like, there were plenty of levels. I mean, it wasn't like they skimped on levels. It was just like, for some reason, it just felt like, particularly as you got sort of past the halfway point in that game, they relied a lot on alternate exits, you know, to try to slow you down. And it just felt like, well, we didn't want to add it in these 5 extra levels, or 10 extra levels. It's the king! I am some sort of Scottish / Norwegian king. Where I have the red beard like... I don't know. I'm thinking Eric the Red right now. I suppose you had redheads in Scotland, Ireland. It's probably my exit, I imagine. We're going into a giant coliseum, which... we'll ignore the fact that the space here... there's not enough space for a coliseum and the rest of this stage, but we'll just pretend like I don't know what I'm talking about, and you know, the game doesn't exist in a hammer space. I say we throw traditional fruit at him, like watermelon. That's a traditional fruit, I'm sure, in the northeast England, or northern England. Gotcha. Or not. Come on, bam, 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 bam. Come on, you. One of the, unrelated to what I've just been talking about, I'm sort of thinking about other things while I'm playing right now. But I may have mentioned this in the past, but I think one of the tragedies, or perhaps blessings, I can't tell if it's a blessing or a tragedy, really, is that humans have to sleep. I know we need sleep for other reasons other than just simple, like, oh, I did all this work and I've used up all my energy, now I need to sleep so I can regain my energy, you know? And you lose all those, you know, 8 hours, you know, or 7 or 6 or however long you sleep every night to sleeping. So, like, I think about how many hours you lose. You know, I'm not necessarily talking about children per se, you know, who need, you know, sleep to grow and that sort of stuff, but like, well, I suppose that would also apply to adults as well, but what I'm trying to get at is, and this is where I talk about it being a mixed blessing and sort of a curse, because I think about, you know, work I work 8, 9 hours. No, I work. Let me count. So I'm out of my house for about 10 hours, okay? A little less, probably let's say 9 hours, okay? That'll kind of ignore some of the driving I do to and from work, but for the most part, we'll say I'm away from my house for 9 hours, okay? So 24-hour day, I'm away for 9 hours, I sleep for 8 hours, that leaves me, what, 7 hours left or so of, you know, quote-unquote free time. And obviously you have the weekends, which is, you know, from the time your work day ends on a Friday until you have to like prepare to go to work the next on Monday, i.e. go to sleep. All of that is technically your free time. Okay. So I often think, like, if I didn't have to sleep, I would have roughly 15, 16 hours to do whatever I wanted, you know? And then I would, you know, after the 16 hour or 15 hours, I would go back to work, you know, etc., etc. So there's a couple problems sort of with this theory. One, if I didn't have to sleep, then I'm sure I would be working a lot longer hours. You know what I mean? Like, instead of having to work 8 hours a day and have 8 hours of free time and 8 hours of sleep, you'd probably work like a 12-hour day. And then you would have 12 hours of work and 12 hours of free time. You know what I mean? Just because you don't need to rest. So why can't you put, I'm speaking from the United States point of view here, why wouldn't you work half the time? I mean, we're giving you half the time, it's free time. The other half you can use for work, right? And sort of the thing is that, you know, after so many hours you get less efficient because you start to tire out. You know, if I'd say, well, you don't have to sleep, then you probably don't get tired out. And if you don't get tired out, then you could probably, like I said, work more hours. But like I said, mixed blessing, curse, you know, I always think about, well, you know, I'll think about all that time that I could be using for something else. You know, playing, reading, you know, watching TV, etc. But like I said, you know, all of that would not be guaranteed free time if I didn't have to sleep. Now, on the other end of this, hey, that guy's got a shield. I have a pretty good idea what to do. I'm doing this first, though, because I'm trying out my different moves, but probably gonna have to use my plunger. Now, okay, so the biological thing about sleeping, it's really great, is it allows you to take the events that happen in your day, particularly your subconscious, you know, things that, you know, you either are trying to deal with, but in some cases you're not, because of whatever. We'll just say because of your inner psychology, is a very general term. You know, you can't really truly process it, or it's too much for your ego to truly, you know, deal with. So it ends up in your subconscious, and in one of the great places that stuff can work itself out is in your dreams, you know, because you're resting, and it gives your mind a chance to unwind, would be a sort of a basic way to explain it. But, you know, your brain kind of needs that time to basically process everything that you did throughout the day and, you know, sort of scrub your brain for things, you know, scrub through your brain, you know, with things. I've heard a lot of people say, I wish I could, you know, I get so many great ideas when I dream. I wish I could, you know, write them all down. And I hear that. I've had a number of really great dreams, you know, that either I remember because they're just, I put them to memory. But I've had a lot of other dreams where, you know, it's like, oh, I really got to write that down. Okay, so this happened and okay, I lost it. I lost the rest of the dream. You know what I mean? Or you remember, you know, part of it, say 10, 15, 20%. You know, perhaps like the most important part of your dream you remember. You know. And unless you're having like a really bad nightmare or something, you'll generally not remember stuff. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you a great example of dreams that I remember. When I was a little kid, like real tiny, like maybe 3, 4, 5, somewhere in that ballpark. I'm talking pre-kindergarten for myself. I had a dream that I was in my bed, you know, just, you know, traditional little kid bed. You know, it's whatever they call that. They call that a double, which is, they call it a double because everything is kind of based off of a crib. So, or I'm sorry, it's called a twin, right? Because a double would be 2 of the twin mattresses, right? Anyways, the reason they call it a twin is because I guess if you put 2 cribs together, it makes a whatever I said. It makes a twin mattress, okay? And then a full mattress would be the next size up if you took 2 twin mattresses and you push them together. And then you have larger versions of the full-size mattress, which are referred to... I'm not going to get into the big sizes that I didn't know existed until I looked on the internet, but you would have bigger sizes, which are called queen size, which gives you extra room on the left, the right, and I believe it also gives you a little more room head to toe. King size is even bigger than a queen size, but I'm not sure if it lacks the length. And then they have a thing called California King that's kind of, it's more narrow than a traditional king, but it's longer than a traditional king. That's where you sort of get your trade-off. And then you have other beds that are even bigger than that. Like, I think there's one called a Dakota bed or a Wyoming bed or Alaska bed. And they're basically designed so that, you know, back in the day, you know, particularly if you're living in a sort of wilderness area, instead of you having a bed for you and your wife and your kid, and you all live in different rooms, in order to save heat, because you're in, you know, a place like Wyoming or Montana, you would all sleep together in one big bed. And that's why that bed is designed for like 4 or 5 people, you know, to sleep elbow to elbow to elbow, or not. Well, yeah, elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow, you know what I mean? I'm getting away from my point, aren't I? But, you know, sleep is good. Obviously, I like sleeping. I remember, you know, some of the dreams, I guess that's what I was talking about. Some of the dreams I remember I was in my twin bed, and my twin bed had wheels, and I was directing it. You know what I mean? I was driving it, but I didn't have like a steering wheel or like levers. I was just sort of sitting up in bed with my, you know, my covers over me up to roughly, you know, where my waist was. And you know, I'm going through the streets. We're just driving, you know, I'm sort of controlling it with my brain. And then we make a left-hand turn into an alleyway. And there's a dead end. And then in my dream, I make another left-hand turn. And the left-hand turn is into an abyss, and I start falling into a black void. Then I wake up. It kind of sucks. Because that's like the black void dreams are just like the worst. Like, you know, where you're, I don't even know. I don't know what it represents. It's just sort of like, imagine, you fell into a pit. It's kind of like that, except you don't know what's at the bottom of the pit, and it's sort of bottomless and black and voidy, and it just, ugh, hate it. Got other ones that I've actually been able to physically write down. Whoopsie, that was a mistake. Should have seen the bucket of water up there. We'll just use Luigi again. He can slip through the bars. And what was I? Hey, rats, stay the hell out of here. I don't like you. They're more like mice than rats. But yeah, I mean, you hopefully get my point on the whole sleep thing. It's on the one hand, it's important for your body. It's a natural thing that everybody does. Humans do it, bears do it, birds do it. Pretty much everyone sleeps. With the exception of, like, I don't know, there's probably some deep sea fish or something doesn't sleep. But like even bugs like bees and wasps and them, when the sun goes down, they go to sleep. Or they rest at least, Which is actually it's actually an ideal time to kill them, is either at dusk or dawn, because they're not up and moving yet, and you can kill the whole nest. If I'm provided they're building the nest outside, that is. Whoopsie. There's little, you can see there's little grabby balls up there for me to tug on. There's one on each side that I need to grab. Yep. Alright, I can actually use Luigi if I wanted to go across the thing again, but I'm going to have to use Luigi regardless so I can go across this little, whatever you want to call this. I'm pretty sure this is some sort of sewage shit drain, but who knows? Maybe this is where the fresh water flows in from. It's one of those things that, that you don't think about. And like, you're gonna make a movie about kings and queens and their castle. Let's not talk about the way they basically took shits into buckets and then threw it down a drain. It's not really a drain, like it's like a sluice on the at the wall of the castle, and you would just toss your shit in the hole and it would flow outside into the moat. Yes, if they had a moat, it would flow into the moat. Of course, I don't know how many legitimate castles had moats and how much of that is just fiction. But yeah, it would either end up in a shit pile outside of the castle after the sluice. It's provided, you don't just toss your shit in the streets, which was commonplace until 1800s, I believe. Or maybe it was a little earlier than that, maybe 1700s. Despite the fact that, to a degree, Rome had sewer systems to help deal with waste. At least I think I remember that correctly. Yes, the sewer system did not catch on for another... Boy, are we talking 1500 years? That would be pretty nuts, wouldn't it? I don't know my history well enough. Of course, I guess it really depends on what we're talking about. I'm talking a very Eurocentric point of view. Like places, obviously less developed places in Asia and Africa, and maybe even South America probably don't have sewer systems. Some do, some don't. It really depends on where you're at. Just don't expect any toilet paper, buddy. We got the shower wand to shower your butthole off with. It's probably the more sanitary thing to do than to take toilet paper and wipe your ass with it. I'm guessing. Woohoo! Alright, we're gonna grab this treasure here. I'm gonna cut the episode. When we come back, we're gonna go into the next room. Does that sound nifty?